Today I'm gonna answer as many of your questions about Padel Racket as I can in under these minutes. I have received hundreds of questions and many of them are similar. But first, a quick reminder, because if you use the code 4Set at Padel Market, you will get 10% off worldwide and you also be helping the channel. Hello everyone, I'm Pablo and I welcome you to a new 4Set. Well, let's kick off with the questions you've left me across different videos, but if you want me to answer yours in the next one, you appear in the comments. Lockwood 30, I'm buying my first racket and I want it to be easy to handle, have a good sweet spot, solid ball output and not require too much technique since I'm a beginner intermediate player. My options are Air Viper 2025, Adidas Metabone Carbon Control and Bullpadel Neuro. Well, I will rule out the bubble at Air Viper because it's the most technical of the three and has less ball output, which is something you are actually looking for at your level. So between the Adidas and the Bullpadel, they are pretty similar but with a few key differences. First, the price, because the Adidas is 30 euros more expensive than the Bullpadel if you use the 4Set code at Padel Market. In terms of sweet spot, they are tied. It is true that Bullpadel wins on maneuverability while Adidas takes the lead on ball output. So the answer depends what you prioritize. Personally, I would go for the Neuron because of its stiffer feel, which gives you more control and is also cheaper. Miguel 00, Pablo, if I buy a racket from last season at the end of the year, has it been sitting in a warehouse for a year or more? If so, does that affect the hardness or anything else? Well, most likely yes, but it also depends on the model. Some rackets are restocked more often and don't sit around for long. For example, if you buy last season's 8010 by Tapia, odds are it hasn't been in the warehouse that long. But if you go for a less popular model, chances are higher it's been sitting longer. And yes, that can slightly affect hardness, especially because warehouses are usually not temperature controlled. It is true that it really depends on how the racket was stored, but don't worry because the difference in feel will be very minor and the price difference is usually worth it. Artistic Vandal J, for a beginner intermediate player, should I buy a brand new 2025 racket for 70 to 90 euros or a get discounted 2023-2024 one that originally cost 200 but now sells for 100 euros? Well, based on the previous question, I would definitely go for the better racket from a previous season at a discount price. Without knowing the specific models, a 200 racket from a past season will almost always give you better performance than a brand new low-end one. But remember that rackets don't really evolve that much from one year to next. Lito Theb, do the head Cuello Motion and Pro versions have a more noticeable rough surface? Well, between the Motion and the Pro, I don't notice any difference. They feel the same to me. But I do get the sense that Cuello's actual racket has a rougher surface. But to be honest, that happens with a lot of pro players. Mark Robbins 5984, hi Pablo, if I feel my shots are too powerful and I want to slow them down, aside from improving technique, should I get a softer or harder racket? Well, super good question and there could be a few reasons for that, but I would recommend a harder racket. Because with a harder racket you will get less ball output and it will take more effort to you and better technique to generate power. That said, a harder racket will force you to be more precise, so be careful because it's a double-edged sword. So maybe switching to something just slightly harder than what you are currently using will help reduce the power without losing control. Javier Farfan 6963, is the 8010 12K softer than the future models? Well, yes, because the new 3Nox future rackets are the stiffest one in the lineup. They are made in the Paraguay factory, the one that I actually visited and filmed a video with Edu Alonso that you have the link here. So if you want to feel the difference in hardness, just look at how much they compress when hitting. The truth is that I've been playing with the Future Attack and Future Hybrid lately, which uses to be Augsburger and Liebacht's rackets. And honestly, I love how they feel, especially in summer. Mavericki 96, isn't it common knowledge that pro use modified rackets we cannot buy? Well, yes, because most pro players use rackets that are custom made by the brand and not available to the public. Some players just ask for a specific weight, often outside the standard retail range, usually heavier. Other players go further and change the foam, the carbon, the whole pattern, even the handle size. Ruben Chavez 2034, does the round Nox filter feel the same as the hybrid shape, or is it softer? Well, all three Nox filter rackets have the exact same composition, so they feel the same in terms of stiffness. They use EV50 foam, Nox hardness and 12K aluminized carbon. So the only thing that changes is the mold, round, hybrid and diamond shapes. Roberto writes 7840. What is your top round shape hard rackets? Well, I will go with the Nox filter control and the Adidas multi-weight of Alex Ruiz. But to be honest, I'm not a big fan of round shapes because I prefer hybrid or diamond. But from the filter I will highlight its maneuverability and sweet spot. And from the multi-weight I love the weight customization system with the screws. Alejo OK1. I thought the carbon type determined hardness, like 3K is soft and 18K is hard. Isn't it that right? Is it actually the foam? Well, let's be real, because the whole K thing is mostly marketing. Because the truth is that a 3K carbon can be harder or softer than an 18K depending on how the fibers are woven, the weight of the layer and the resin used. But without a doubt, the foam is what really defines the feel and hardness. For example, Wilson hardest fiber is the 24K they use in the Vela Pro V3 according to the brand, while the regular Vela V3 uses 3K and it feels softer. Is that difference huge? Well, not really. And when a pro asks for a stiffer racket, brands usually start by changing the foam. Then it is true that they may add more carbon layers but not always switch carbon types, although that does happen too. Elias Monjes, what is balance? I would actually like to make a full video explaining this in depth, so if you are interested, let me know in the comments. But in short, balance is how the weight is distributed across your racket. Think that most rackets weigh around 365 grams, but that weight can be spread out differently. Some brands load up the handle with silicone to reach that weight, which makes the balance lower, while others put more weight in the head, which give it a higher balance. But no worries, because there is no better or worse balance, it all comes down to how it feels in your hand. Daniel P302X, I'm using the Wilson Vela LTV2 right now. I can hit for a long time without elbow pain, but I want something that helps more on attack. I was thinking of the 8010 18K 2025. Well, the 8010 18K is definitely worth considering. You will still feel it moves well and it will give you more help when attacking compared to the Vela LTV2. It's a bit heavier, but the balance makes it very noticeable. Gonzalo Fernandez Toledo 5020, I'm looking for a medium to hard racket because I live in Murcia and it gets really hot. I also want a lot of control and maneuverability. So Gonzalo, I think a lot of people can relate. Because in summer it's actually smart to go for a slightly harder rackets to balance out the foam, soften it in the heat. But it is true that without knowing more about your current racket or playing style, I will say the Nox filter is my go-to right now. And also the price is great with the 4Set code at Padel Market. But if you wanna try something from a different brand, the Babolat Air Beeper is super maneuverable. Ominorca, the best selling rackets are always the ones with top player sponsorships, but brands like Starby, which I think make way better products, get overshadowed. What do you think? Well, that happens in every industry or market. More perfume sells if a famous model advertises it, more ice cream sells if Iniesta promotes it.
Vamos, vamos, tiki-taka, tiki-taka.
Advertising doesn't mean the product's better. We've all seen celebrities baking stuff that turns out to be a scam. That said, it's logical that Tapias, Cuello or Galant's rackets sell more than a Starby. But not necessarily because they're better, but because they're the ones you see the most. And honestly, I think that's totally fair. Because at the end of the day, it's up to the consumer to do their research before buying and to decide what matters most, whether that's the price, the materials, who's using it, or even just the color. Bjorn Gangerson 5904, I already have the Metalbone 3.4 2025, but would you recommend getting the HRD as an option for those hot days when you need a bit of extra power? Well, from my point of view, the HRD isn't as stiff as I would personally like, But if that's the type of racket you like, then yeah, because in that racket everything stayed the same except the core, which is just a bit firmer. Oleg Radov 4849, I'm looking for a racket with low ball output, a big sweet spot and a weight under 360 grams. I don't care about the price, I don't care about power, and I don't care about the design. Well, in your case, you will need a medium stiff racket to get that low ball output while still keeping a large sweet spot. So if you went for a super hard racket, the sweet spot will shrink even more. So in this case, I would recommend you the xplo by the Neno, which weighs under 360 grams without the ESA core, the Babolat Air Veron, or the Head Speed 1 if you are looking for something a bit different. Sergio, what do you think about the Bullpadel xplo? Would you recommend it getting or waiting for the new 2026 Bullpadel rackets? Well, it's honestly one of my favorite Bullpadel rackets this year, but I don't fully agree with the claim that it's the most powerful racket in their history, because a racket that weighs 355 grams without the ESA core with low balance, it just cannot be. That said, I love how easy it is to handle and the dry feel, but they really need to improve the rust surface because it rarely has any texture. Plus, with the glossy finish and no holes in the face of the racket, sometimes the ball just slips off. And since I don't know what the 2026 version will be like, I will say wait, because odds are they will just change the cosmetic. So you might buy the 2025 version at a better price and use the code 4Set at Padel Market. Well, do you have any more questions? Leave it in the comments. Thank you so much for watching the video and see you in the next one. Ciao!